Peace. Shalom. Hutep. Welcome back to chapter 26 or Fly Ball Ferris Wheel 26 of our book Balls of Fire by Judy K. King. Don't forget the screenshot if you'd like to read along with us. And please don't hesitate to like, comment, and subscribe. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. Baseball breaks your heart. It is designed to break your heart. The game begins in the spring when everything else begins again, and it blossoms in the summer, filling all the afternoons and evenings. And then as soon as the chilling rains come, it stops and leaves you to face the fall. A. Bartlett Giamatti, former Major League Baseball commissioner. Fly ball Ferris Wheel 26. When things go black, then little by little the darkness thickened and the shapes, sounds, and the feelings of places became confused in my sleepy spirit. I thought I was falling into a chasm that crossed the world. I felt myself carried painlessly along on a current of molten metal and 1,000 similar streams, the colors of which indicated differing chemicals, crisscross the breast of the world like those blood vessels and veins that writhe in the lobes of the brain. They all flowed, circulated, and throbbed just like that, and I had a feeling that their currents were composed of living souls in a molecular condition, and that the speed of my own movement alone prevented me from distinguishing them. Gerard de Nerval, Aurelia. In his recent book, Consciousness Beyond Life, The Science of NDE, German cardiologist Pim van Lommel, MD, challenges the purely materialist scientific paradigm that relegates consciousness to merely a byproduct of a side effect of the human brain. Van Lommel explains his view that consciousness is non-local or everywhere and endless, surviving the death of the brain. He bases his theory on a 20-year Dutch study of a cardiac arrest and near-death experience. One comprehensive account Van Lommel presents is the fascinating double near-death experience of Monique Henneken at age 31. During a cesarean section, Monique gave birth to a healthy baby boy, but afterwards, she suffered complications from surgery and then cardiac arrest followed by a near-death experience. Resuscitated, she then remained in a critical condition until she became aware of her hopeless situation and attempted to return to the loving environment of her near-death experience by biting off her breathing tube. This activated her second near-death experience, yet she was resuscitated a second time. Later, she wrote her own account of the two near-death experiences, which Van Lommel includes in his book. Monique's account from the Van Lommel's book begins with her first near-death experience. To summarize, she felt as if she were suffocating, and her last conscious thoughts were about her children, her job, her house. Then she heard the beeping alarm from the monitor, indicating that she had flatlined. She watched two nurses working on her body, feeling their panic, but she was happy that she was no longer ensouled in her body. Monique explains, picking up speed. I saw every single room in the hospital, including patients and staff, as well as the past, present, and future of everything that whizzed past by me. Monique describes life as a cycle involving another dimension. At that point, everything went black, and a sense of nostalgia and a childlike innocence overcame Monique, as well as a feeling of maturity over everything she left behind in her life. She said gradually a sense of sight developed around me, like a spear that I myself was a part of. I seemed to have ended up in the omniverse as another image formed was a part of me. I seem to have ended up in the omniverse as another image formed below me, rather. In fact, it formed around and through me. Monique's perception of accelerating speed and motion through things or people suggests the quantum effects of light, speed, and non-locality. Monique then describes a time in her past when she almost drowned in 1974, remembering that she saw herself as a 6-year-old girl. She described how she felt connected to the truth, her origins, what she identifies as a strong sense of separation from my source. Then she explains that she felt everything as though I had gone back in time, including feeling the pain and sadness of people upset by her words of actions, or actions rather. This suggests time reversed from effect to cause, from the effect of pain and sadness of others to the cause of her actions or words rather than the normal process in time of cause to effect. With time reverse, what you do comes back to you. Monique now has no fear of her thoughts or feelings, only the desire to explain her feelings to some people. At that point, everything fades and she painfully thuds back into her body, only to take off again. She ascends through a light spectrum enveloped in a soft tornado of all colors, with its tip pointed at the Earth's atmosphere. She enters the eye of the tornado with the sense that she was soaring to the center. Monique said, I sensed and knew instinctively that this force had the shape of an hourglass and that it would expand at some point, become even bigger than the place I had come from. She then experiences different levels and dimensions, ascending, descending, and everything becoming a warm black. And she realizes that pure, warm, soft black is also light, a kind of energy palpable even without a body. Rising higher through the levels, she senses parts of both myself and others in my life review, and that she would arrive at the purest form of consciousness. Monique mentions that she never thought of spirituality, although she had questions about God, war, nature, disease. Then the black light cleared like a fog, turning an indescribable luminous color. Monique floats along a shore, describing the luminous light as follows. Slowly but surely I realized that the luminescence consisted of a kind of infinite river of brilliance, like the brilliance of a setting sun reflected in rippling water, and little pinpricks of light like small stars. The brilliance was made up of beautiful little globules of light, extremely bright and quite unlike anything on Earth. They looked like nuclei surrounded by a body of light. Not literal bodies, but more like celestial bodies or atoms, with clearly visible electrons floating past me, close to the ground. I checked to see where they were coming from and wondered if the dark aperture I saw might be a so-called black hole. The deep black looked more a cave from which the light gushed like a waterfall and thus formed the river in the tranquil field. The river, the field, the current, and the black formed a peaceful whole. brilliant clusters of DNA appeared to be flowing right by my feet, even though I didn't have any. The particles were linked in complementary pairs, which in turn made up an enormous organic spiral. The spirals formed a cluster in the field. I sensed that I could sail or float along with any pinprick of light, particle, being, consciousness, atom, soul, or whatever. All I had to do was enter or join the chain. The description of brilliant clusters of DNA is similar to a description of a particle creation zone. Recall Punsley's motto in 1998 of a polar particle acceleration gap that injects seed pairs into the gap. Make sure we see chapter 11. Monique then describes her deep happiness and desire to join these particles in this current, the creative force, this all-encompassing consciousness. She recognizes many particles as belonging to people I had known on Earth, including my younger brother who had died before I was born. At this point, Monique considers becoming part of this whole, but she realizes there will be no way back to her body. She then describes a sense of timelessness, feelings of overwhelming love and knowledge. She feels as if she had awakened her source, but she desires to share her experience of tranquility, so she made a well-considered choice to return to her body. However, after returning to her life-supported body, she senses the hopelessness of her situation, feeling imprisoned and angry. So she clamped her teeth down on the respiratory tube in her mouth and bit down as hard as I could until the incubation tube was severed. Monique felt free, but realized that this act was not good, not loving towards nature or herself. She then experienced not a soft vortex, but instead a hard, cold funnel with a pinprick of light, along with confusion, panic, loneliness, fear, anger, and the feeling of a wall. She feels pain for giving up on her body, for abandoning oneness with those clusters. Feeling totally desolate, she sees her deceased father drifting by, sensing that he knew his way around this darkness. He floated in slow motion ahead of her, never looking at her. Monique senses she had a choice to return to her body or accompany her father to the lower intensity pinprick of light. Feeling anxious, she tries to follow her father, but she cannot catch up to him, and then he enters the light. Now Monique's focus on moving backwards, so as not to enter the light, so that she can share knowledge, love, honesty, and awareness with others, despite the pain she would endure in a comatose state. During this coma, she realizes that her first near-death experience was natural, what she called a pure perception within the source, without her ego. The negative near-death experience was an unnatural one that sprang from lovelessness, where she still possessed her ego. After these near-death experiences and her personal library research, Monique now views our classical world as a feeble reflection of reality, and her near-death experiences as the greatest reality, where I awoke again and again with a speed far greater than the speed of light, she writes. I still have no scientific explanation for what I experienced in 1991, but within the exact sciences, the M theory and the description of antagonist harmonic pairs seem to come closest to my picture of the clusters in the field of their effect. The M in M theory has been referred to as M for M-brain or M for mother of a theory. In physicist Brian Greene's book, The Fabric of the Cosmos, he explains how the 5 versions of string theory were unified by Edward Witten, who in 1995 showed how a single master theory encompasses all 5 string versions. For example, Witten's analysis revealed that M theory has 11 space-time dimensions, with 7 of these curled up along with the 4 we see, 3 space and 1 time. Further, the unified 5 string versions were not only about strings, but also branes or membranes. So the cosmos itself may be a large brane, B-R-A-N-E. That is a 3 brane with 4 dimensions, 3 spaces, and 1 time. In summary, Van Lommel believes that the roles of DMT, junk DNA, and nuclear spin resonance, in particular, require further analysis. Van Lommel challenges the purely materialistic scientific paradigm of current Western science, believing in non-local and endless consciousness, which can explain the near-death experience. We've come to an end of chapter 26. When we return, we will be on chapter 27, or Flybar Ferris Wheel 27, Threshold Stabilization. Oh gosh. Anyway, thank y'all for coming out. God bless you. Good night. I really appreciate you. Be safe.